The rain was coming down hard that night. Not the gentle kind that makes you feel cozy inside, but the angry type that pounds against your windows and makes you wonder if you should have checked the weather forecast. I was sitting on my couch halfway through a documentary about space exploration when I heard it. A knock on my door. Actually, it was more like desperate banging. I glanced at the clock on my wall. It was almost 10 at night. Who shows up at someone's house at this hour, especially in weather like this? For a second, I thought about ignoring it. Maybe it was someone at the wrong address. But the knocking continued, more urgent this time. I got up and walked to the door, my mind running through possibilities. A neighbor with an emergency? Someone's car broke down? I turned on the porch light and looked through the peephole. What I saw made me pause. There was a woman standing there, completely drenched. Her hair was plastered to her face, and even through the small peephole I could see she was shivering. I opened the door quickly. The wind immediately pushed rain into my hallway, but I didn't care about that. The woman standing in front of me looked like she'd been swimming in her clothes. Water was dripping from everywhere, forming a small puddle around her feet. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice shaking. I couldn't tell if it was from the cold or something else. "I know this is crazy. I know you probably don't even remember me." I looked at her face, trying to place her. There was something familiar about her, but I couldn't quite figure it out. She must have seen the confusion in my eyes because she quickly explained. "We met at Daniel's birthday party 3 months ago. You were talking about your work at the community center." It clicked then. Daniel's party. There had been maybe 30 people there, and I'd talked to so many that night. I had a vague memory of her standing near the food table, but we hadn't really talked much. Maybe exchanged a few words about the weather or the food. That was it. "Oh, right," I said, still trying to understand why she was at my door. "What happened? Are you okay?" "My car broke down," she said, gesturing vaguely behind her. 2 blocks from here. My phone's dead and I couldn't remember anyone else's address. Yours just stuck in my head for some reason. I know this is weird. I can just wait on your porch until the rain stops if that's better." "Wait on the porch? In this weather?" She'd catch pneumonia or something worse. No, come inside," I said, stepping back to let her in. "You're going to freeze out there." She hesitated for a moment, like she was debating whether this was appropriate. But another gust of wind and rain made the decision for her. She stepped inside, immediately apologizing for the water trail she was leaving on my floor. "Don't worry about that," I said, closing the door behind her. "Let me get you a towel." "Actually, wait here for just a second." I rushed to my bedroom and grabbed some clothes. An old university sweatshirt and some sweatpants. They'd be too big for her, but at least they were dry. I also grabbed 2 towels from the bathroom. When I came back, she was still standing in the exact same spot, dripping and looking uncomfortable. She looked like she was afraid to move and make more of a mess. "Here," I said, handing her the towels and clothes. "The bathroom's right down that hall. Take a hot shower if you want. You're shivering pretty badly." "I can't," she protested. "You've already done too much. Look, you're going to get sick if you stay in those wet clothes. Just take the shower. I'll make some tea or coffee or something warm." She looked at me for a long moment like she was trying to figure out if I was real. Then she nodded, took the clothes and towels and headed to the bathroom. While she was in the shower, I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. I also grabbed my phone and looked up the number for a local towing company. They were closed until morning, which made sense given the time and weather. I made a mental note to call them first thing. I also took a moment to actually think about the situation. A woman I barely knew had shown up at my house in the middle of a storm. It was strange, sure, but she seemed genuinely in trouble. And honestly, what else was I supposed to do? Leave her outside? 20 minutes later, she emerged from the bathroom. She looked completely different. The sweatshirt hung loosely on her frame, and she'd rolled up the sweatpants several times so they wouldn't drag on the floor. Her hair was still damp but no longer dripping. She looked warmer, but there was still something in her eyes, something that went beyond just being cold and wet. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I really can't thank you enough." "It's fine, really," I said, pouring hot water into 2 mugs. "Do you want tea or hot chocolate?" "Hot chocolate sounds amazing," she said with a small smile. I made us both hot chocolate and gestured toward the living room. She sat on the edge of the couch like she was ready to jump up and leave at any moment. I handed her the mug and sat in the armchair across from her. "So your car broke down?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Yeah, it just suddenly stopped. I'm not great with cars, so I have no idea what happened. It just died." I called a towing company, but they're closed until morning. The storms caused a lot of problems, apparently. I can call them first thing tomorrow if you want. That would be great, she said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. I'm really sorry for barging in like this. Stop apologizing, I said gently. It's not a problem. Where were you heading anyway? She paused before answering, and I saw something flicker across her face. I was going to visit my parents. They live about an hour from here. In this weather? I know, not the smartest choice, she admitted. But I needed to talk to them about something important. I guess the universe had other plans. We sat in silence for a moment, just listening to the rain hammer against the windows. The storm showed no signs of letting up. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse. You know, she said suddenly, her voice soft, I need to tell you something about why I'm really here. I looked up at her, confused. What do you mean? Your car broke down. It did, she said quickly. That part's true. But there's more to it. She took a deep breath like she was gathering courage. Do you remember what you said at that party? At Daniel's? I tried to think back. I'd talked about a lot of things that night. Work, movies, probably complained about traffic. You were talking to someone, she continued. Some guy who was making jokes about people seeing therapists. He said something dismissive, something about people just needing to toughen up. And you stopped him. I did remember that. Some guy had been pretty insensitive and I'd called him out on it. You talked about your sister, she said, and I felt my chest tighten. You said she'd struggled with depression. That one person's kindness had helped save her life. You said it so honestly, so openly. Most people don't talk about things like that. Okay, I said slowly, not sure where this was going. She set down her mug and looked directly at me. Her eyes were filling with tears. I was standing right behind you when you said that, and I needed to hear it more than you could ever know. The room suddenly felt very quiet despite the storm outside. She wiped her eyes quickly like she was embarrassed by the tears. I didn't know what to say, so I just waited. Sometimes that's all you can do. Just wait and let someone find their words. 3 months ago when I was at that party, she began, her voice shaky. I wasn't doing well. Actually, that's putting it lightly. I was in a really dark place. The kind of dark where you start thinking maybe the world would be better without you in it. My heart sank. I knew that darkness. I'd seen it in my sister. I'd watched her fight through it. I'd made plans, she continued. Not for that night, but soon. I had everything figured out. I'd even written letters to my family explaining why. I went to that party because Daniel kept insisting, and I thought maybe I should do one last normal thing before everything ended. I felt cold despite the hot chocolate in my hands. This stranger in my living room was telling me she'd been planning to end her life. Then I heard you talking, she said. I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop. I was just standing there trying to decide if I should leave early. And I heard you defending people like me. You talked about your sister with so much love and concern. You said that one person checking in on her, one friend who refused to let her push everyone away, made all the difference. She paused and took a shaky breath. You said something else too. You said that depression lies to you. It tells you that you're alone, that no one cares, that nothing will get better. But those are all lies. You said the hard part is fighting through those lies long enough to see the truth. I remembered that conversation now. That guy at the party had really bothered me with his attitude. I'd gotten more passionate about it than I usually do with strangers. When I went home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. For the first time in months, I wondered if maybe I was believing lies. Maybe things could get better. Maybe I just needed to hold on a little longer. What did you do? I asked softly. I called a helpline that night. At 3 a.m, I called them, and they talked to me for hours. They helped me find a therapist. My first appointment was 2 days later. She smiled then, a real smile despite the tears still on her cheeks. I've been seeing that therapist every week since then. I started medication about a month ago. And slowly, very slowly, things started to change. The darkness started to lift. Not all at once, but little by little. I started believing maybe I deserved to be here. Maybe there was a reason to keep going. I felt my own eyes getting wet. I had no idea. How could I have known that a conversation at a party, something I'd barely remembered, had done this? Tonight I was driving to my parents' house to tell them everything. To tell them how close they came to losing me, and how I'm fighting my way back. I know that's going to be a hard conversation, but I'm ready for it now. That's incredibly brave, I said. Maybe, she said, But here's the thing. When I planned my route tonight, I went out of my way to drive through your neighborhood. I've done it a few times, actually. You'd given me your business card that night, the one with your address on it for the community center. I've kept it in my wallet like some kind of good luck charm. She pulled out her wallet and showed me. Sure enough, there was my card, worn and bent from being carried around. I wanted to thank you. I'd driven by your house probably 5 times in the past month, trying to work up the courage to knock on your door, to tell you what your words meant to me. But I always chickened out. It seemed crazy, right? Showing up at a stranger's house to say, hey, you accidentally saved my life. And then your car broke down, I said, understanding now. 2 blocks away from your house, in a storm. I couldn't call for help because my phone died. And the only address I knew by heart in this neighborhood was yours. If that's not the universe pushing me to finally talk to you, I don't know what is. We both sat there for a moment, letting it all sink in. The rain continued outside, but inside my living room, something profound was happening. This wasn't just about a broken-down car or a storm. This was about connection, about how our words and actions ripple out in ways we never see. I don't know what to say, I admitted. I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad you made that phone call. I'm glad you found help. Me too, she said. And I know this is probably the weirdest situation ever. I show up unannounced, soaking wet, and tell you all this heavy stuff. You're probably thinking I'm completely out of my mind. Actually, I said, I'm thinking about my sister, about how she almost didn't make it, about the friend who refused to give up on her, who kept showing up even when my sister pushed her away. I'm thinking about how grateful I am that person existed. And I'm thinking that maybe I was supposed to say those things at that party. Maybe you were supposed to hear them. Do you believe in that kind of thing? Fate or destiny or whatever? I don't know, I said honestly. But I believe in people showing up for each other. And I believe in second chances. My sister got one. You're getting one. That matters more than whether it's fate or coincidence. She nodded, wiping her eyes again. Can I tell you something else? Something I haven't told anyone except my therapist? Of course. The hardest part wasn't the depression itself. It was feeling invisible, like I could disappear and no one would really notice. Not because people didn't care, but because I'd gotten so good at pretending everything was fine. I smiled at work. I laughed at jokes. I showed up to parties, and inside I was drowning. That must have been exhausting. It was. But you know what changed things? My therapist taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, that being honest about struggling isn't burdening people, that the right people will show up if you let them. And have they shown up? Some have, some didn't, and that hurt. But the ones who have make all the difference. My therapist, obviously, my younger brother, who I finally told everything to last month, a woman in my therapy group who texts me every morning to check in, and now you in this weird, unexpected way. I smiled. I'm glad your car broke down near my house, she laughed then, a real laugh. That might be the strangest thing anyone's ever said to me, but yeah, me too. The storm outside was still raging, but somehow it didn't seem scary anymore. It seemed like it had a purpose, like it had brought someone who needed help to someone who could provide it. So what happens now? I asked. I mean, we can't get your car fixed until tomorrow. Where were you planning to go? She looked uncertain. I don't know. Maybe a hotel? In this weather? Good luck finding one with rooms available. Half the city probably lost power. You should just stay here tonight. The guest room's not fancy, but it's dry and warm. She looked at me like I'd just offered her something precious. I couldn't, you've already done so much. Look, it's late, the weather's terrible, and honestly, I'd feel better knowing you're safe. The guest room's right upstairs. Clean sheets, everything you need. It's really not a big deal. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. Really, thank you for everything. I showed her the guest room, gave her an extra blanket, and made sure she had everything she needed. Before I left her for the night, she stopped me at the door. Hey, she said, I know I dropped a lot on you tonight. If you want to talk about it or ask questions or anything, I'm okay with that. I'm learning to be open about this stuff. Get some rest, I said. We can talk more tomorrow. That night, I lay in my own bed, unable to sleep. I kept thinking about what she'd told me, how close she'd come to giving up, how a conversation I barely remembered had somehow planted a seed of hope. It made me think about all the other conversations I'd had, all the small moments I'd forgotten. How many of those had mattered to someone? How many times had I made a difference without knowing it? The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee. I could hear movement upstairs, so I knew she was awake too. When she came down, she looked better than she had the night before. More rested, less like she was carrying the weight of the world. "Morning," I said, handing her a cup of coffee. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I expected, actually. Your guest room is really comfortable." We sat at the kitchen table and I pulled out my phone. "I was thinking we should call that tow truck company. They should be open by now." But before I could dial, her phone rang. She'd plugged it in overnight and it had finally charged. She looked at the screen and her face fell. "It's my therapist," she said. "I have a check-in call with her every Saturday morning." "I completely forgot." "Take it," I said. "I'll be in the living room." I tried not to listen, but the walls weren't that thick. I could hear her voice rising and falling, sometimes shaky, sometimes stronger. At one point, I heard her crying. About 20 minutes later, she came into the living room. Her eyes were red. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, sitting down. "Actually, it's good. I told her about the car breaking down, about showing up here, about finally telling you everything. She said I did the right thing, that it's important to acknowledge the people who help us, even in small ways. I'm glad she thinks so. But also," she continued, her voice getting quieter, talking about all of it last night. "And then again this morning with her, it brought up a lot. The stress of the car trouble, the emotions from opening up to you. It's triggering some old anxiety." I could see her hands shaking slightly as she held her coffee cup. "What can I do to help?" I asked. "Honestly, just what you're doing. Being calm, not making a big deal out of it. My therapist suggested I do some breathing exercises and maybe go for a walk once the weather clears up." The storm had passed during the night. The sun was actually starting to come out, weak but present. "Want some company on that walk?" I asked. "You don't have to. I know I don't have to, but I'm offering." We took a walk around the neighborhood after breakfast. The streets were littered with branches and leaves from the storm, and there were puddles everywhere. We didn't talk much, just walked. Sometimes that's what people need. Not conversation or advice, just someone walking beside them. When we got back to the house, I called the tow truck company. They said they could come in a couple of hours. We spent that time just existing in the same space. She read a book she'd found on my shelf. I worked on some emails for the community center. Every now and then, one of us would say something and we'd have a brief conversation before falling back into comfortable silence. When the tow truck came, we walked together to where her car had died. The driver said it looked like an electrical problem. Nothing too serious, but it would take a day or two to fix. "I can give you a ride to your parents' house if you want," I offered. "It's Saturday. I don't have plans." She considered this. "That's an hour away." "I know, but you came all this way to talk to them. Seems like you should still do that." "Are you sure?" "That's a lot of driving." "I'm sure." The drive to her parents' house was easy. We talked about small things at first. Favorite movies, places we'd traveled, embarrassing stories from childhood. Then the conversation deepened again. She told me more about her therapy, what she was learning about herself. I told her more about my sister, how she was doing now, how proud I was of her recovery. "You know what's strange?" she said as we got closer to her parents' house. "Last night when I knocked on your door, I was terrified. I thought you'd think I was crazy or weird or too much. But you just helped. No judgment, no questions about why I knew where you lived. You just helped. What else was I going to do?" A lot of people would have done something else. Called the police maybe, or turned me away. I've learned that not everyone knows how to help someone who's struggling. It's not always because they don't care. Sometimes they just don't know what to do. "My sister taught me that," I said. "When she was at her worst, I made a lot of mistakes. I tried to fix everything, gave advice when she needed listening, got frustrated when she didn't get better fast enough. But I learned. We both learned together. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her." When we pulled up to her parents' house, she sat in the car for a moment, not moving. "You nervous?" I asked, terrified, but in a good way, if that makes sense. Like I'm scared of the conversation, but I know I need to have it, and I'm ready. "You've got this," she turned to look at me. "Can I ask you something?" "And be honest?" "Okay. Do you think we could stay in touch? Not because I need saving or help or anything like that, but because I think you're a good person, and I could use more good people in my life. And maybe I could be a good person in yours too," I smiled. "I'd like that." She wrote down her number and I texted her so she'd have mine. Before she got out of the car, she turned back one more time. "Thank you. For everything. for letting me in during the storm, for listening, for not making me feel crazy, for driving me here. Just thank you. You're welcome. And hey, good luck with your parents. Thanks. I'll need it. I watched her walk up to the front door. She knocked, and a woman who must have been her mother opened it. There was confusion on the mother's face at first, then concern when she saw her daughter's expression. Then her mother pulled her into a tight hug, and they both disappeared inside. I sat there for a moment before starting the drive home. Something had shifted in me too. This stranger who'd shown up on my doorstep had reminded me why I do what I do, why I speak up, why I try to help. Because you never know when your words or actions might be exactly what someone needs to hear. Weeks passed after that weekend. True to our word, we stayed in touch. She'd text me sometimes, usually just small things. A funny thing that happened at work. A victory in therapy. Sometimes she'd send me articles about mental health that she found interesting. I'd respond with my own updates. Stories from the community center, pictures of terrible cooking attempts. It became a routine. Every Wednesday evening, she'd drive over and we'd have dinner together. Nothing fancy, just cooking together and talking. Sometimes she'd arrive stressed from work, and we'd spend the evening watching movies instead. Other times, we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. My sister noticed the change in me. I'd become less isolated, more open to connection. She called me one Wednesday evening while I was chopping vegetables. "You sound happy," she said. "What's going on?" I told her the whole story. About the storm, the knock on the door, everything. My sister was quiet for a long moment after I finished. "That's incredible," she finally said. "You know what this means, right?" "What?" The conversation that helped her was about me, about my struggle. So in a weird way, what I went through helped save someone else. That makes it mean something more, you know? I'd never thought about it that way. My sister's pain had led to her recovery, which led to my understanding, which led to a conversation that helped someone else. It was all connected. "She sounds like a good friend," my sister said. "She is." "Then don't mess it up." Good friends are rare. My sister was right, of course. Over the next few months, that friendship deepened. We celebrated small victories together. Her finding a new job she actually enjoyed. Me finally organizing that community fundraiser I'd been putting off. We were there for the hard times too, when her anxiety spiked, when I felt overwhelmed with work, when either of us just needed someone who understood. But then things got complicated. Not in the way you might think. It wasn't about romance or crossed boundaries. It was about her ex-boyfriend showing up again. She'd mentioned him before. He'd been part of the reason she'd gotten so low. Not in an obvious way, but in those subtle ways that eat away at your sense of self. Little comments about her appearance. Getting upset when she wanted to spend time with friends. Making her feel guilty for having needs or feelings. Classic stuff that you don't realize is harmful until you're out of it. He called her out of nowhere on a Tuesday night. She told me about it the next day when she came over. "He wants to meet up," she said, pacing around my kitchen. "Says he's changed. That he's been in therapy too. That he realizes how badly he treated me." "How do you feel about that?" "Confused. Part of me wants to believe him. We were together for 3 years. That's a lot of history. And maybe he has changed. People can change, right?" "They can," I said carefully. "But you don't owe him a chance to prove it. You know that, right?" "I know. My therapist said the same thing. But what if I'm being unfair? What if he really is different?" I could see her starting to doubt herself, starting to fall back into old patterns of putting his feelings above her own well-being. "Can I tell you what I think?" I asked. "Please. I think you should trust your gut. When you talk about him, even now when he's supposedly changed, you don't light up. You get tense. You start questioning yourself. Compare that to how you talk about your life now. Your job, your friends, your progress. You sound confident, strong, happy. Why risk that? Because maybe I'm meant to forgive him. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. You can forgive someone and still choose not to have them in your life." She sat down at the kitchen table, putting her head in her hands. "Why is this so hard?" "Because you're a good person who wants to believe in second chances. But you're also the person who gets to decide who deserves a second chance in your life." We talked for hours that night. I didn't tell her what to do. That wasn't my place. But I asked her questions. How did he make her feel before? What has actually changed? What does her therapist think? What would she tell a friend in the same situation? By the end of the night, she seemed more clear. "I'm not going to meet him. Not yet, anyway. Maybe never. I need more time to be sure of who I am without him, and if he's really changed, he'll respect that. Sounds like a good decision. Thanks for not judging me for even considering it. Why would I judge you? Relationships are complicated. Feelings are complicated. You're human. But apparently her ex wasn't as changed as he claimed. When she told him she wasn't ready to meet, he didn't respond well. The text started that night. Not threatening or aggressive, but manipulative, saying she was being unfair, that she owed him a conversation, that he'd done all this work on himself for her. Classic guilt tripping. She showed up at my house 3 days later, not crying like that first rainy night, but clearly upset. This time I didn't have to invite her in. She had a key now. We'd exchanged keys a month earlier, both of us acknowledging that this friendship had become something real and lasting. He won't stop texting, she said, dropping onto my couch. Every day, multiple times a day. I've asked him to stop. I've explained that I need space. But he just keeps pushing. Block his number, I said simply. But what if that makes him angry? Then he gets angry. But he gets angry away from you. You told him no. He's not respecting that. You don't owe him access to you. She looked at her phone like it was a bomb. What if I'm overreacting? You're not. Listen to me. You asked him to stop. He's not stopping. That tells you everything you need to know about whether he's really changed. She sat there for a long moment, then opened her phone. I watched as she blocked his number, then his social media accounts. Then she put the phone down and burst into tears. I feel guilty, she sobbed. Why do I feel guilty? Because he trained you to feel guilty. Because for 3 years he made you responsible for his feelings. That doesn't go away overnight. But it does go away eventually. We stayed up late that night too. She talked about the relationship in a way she hadn't before. All the little red flags she'd ignored. The ways he'd slowly isolated her from friends. How he'd reacted badly whenever she achieved something. It all poured out. You know what scares me? She said around midnight. I almost went back. If you hadn't been here to talk sense into me, I might have actually met him. And then who knows? Maybe I would have believed his act. Maybe I would have given him another chance. And then everything I've worked so hard for would have been for nothing. But you didn't go back. That's what matters. And you wouldn't have, even without me. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong right now. Strength isn't about always feeling confident. It's about making the right choice even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. Even when part of you wants to do the easy thing. You did that. That's strength. She stayed on my couch that night. We watched old comedies until she fell asleep. I threw a blanket over her and went to bed myself, grateful that she'd chosen to come here instead of facing her demons alone. A year passed. Not slowly, but not too quickly either. Just the normal passage of time filled with ordinary moments that somehow became extraordinary, because they were shared. The Wednesday dinners never stopped. They became the anchor of both our weeks. Sometimes other people joined us. My sister came a few times and the two of them bonded over their shared experiences. Her younger brother came once, thanking me awkwardly for being there for his sister. A couple of people from her therapy group became regulars too. My small, quiet house became less quiet, less lonely. It became the kind of place where people felt welcome, where they could be themselves without judgment. Funny how one rainy night could change everything. She was doing remarkably well. She'd gotten a promotion at her new job. She'd started painting again, something she'd given up years ago. She'd even started dating someone new, carefully this time, with clear boundaries and healthy communication. I met him once and he seemed genuinely good for her. More importantly, she seemed like herself around him, confident, happy, not diminished, but tonight was special. Tonight I was standing at a podium in a community center, looking out at about 100 people. It was a fundraiser for mental health resources in our area, something I'd been working on for months. I hadn't planned to speak. Public speaking wasn't really my thing, but she'd convinced me, told me that my story, our story, might help someone else. So here I was, nervous and sweating slightly under the lights. I want to tell you about a rainy night, I began, and immediately I heard the steady rain starting outside. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, and a few people chuckled. I told them about the knock on my door, about a stranger who'd turned into one of my closest friends, about how a conversation I didn't remember had saved a life, about how small acts of kindness ripple outward in ways we can't predict or measure. I'm not a hero, I said, meaning it. I just opened my door. I just listened. I just showed up. That's all any of us can do. Show up for each other. Be present, be kind. Create spaces where people feel safe to be honest about their struggles. I could see her in the audience, tears streaming down her face. My sister was next to her, also crying. Half the audience seemed to be emotional, actually. My sister taught me about darkness and light, I continued. About how depression lies to you. How it tells you you're alone, that nobody cares, that nothing will get better. But here's the truth, you're not alone. People do care. Things can get better. Sometimes you just need one person who refuses to let you disappear into that darkness. One person who keeps showing up even when it's hard. I wrapped up my speech and stepped down from the podium. She met me at the bottom of the stairs and hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. For that night, for every night since, for telling our story. Our story, I repeated. I like that. After the event, we walked to our cars together. The rain had gotten heavier and we didn't have umbrellas. We were both getting soaked, but neither of us rushed. You know what's beautiful? She said, stopping in the middle of the parking lot. I'm not afraid of storms anymore. That night, when I showed up at your door, I felt like I was drowning. The rain, the darkness, all of it felt like too much. But the rain brought me to you, and you helped me find my way back to myself. You did the hard work, I reminded her. I just kept the door open. No, she said firmly. You did more than that. You saw me. When I couldn't see myself, when I thought I was invisible and didn't matter, you saw me. You treated me like I was worth saving. That changed everything. I felt my throat tighten. You were always worth it. You just needed to see it yourself. We stood there in the rain, both of us soaked through but not caring. Around us, people were running to their cars, holding bags over their heads. But we just stood there, letting the rain wash over us. I need to tell you something, she said. Something I've been thinking about a lot. Okay. When I first started therapy, my therapist asked me to think about what I wanted my life to look like. What would make me want to stay, to fight, to keep going? And I couldn't answer. I had no idea what I wanted because I'd spent so long just trying to survive. She smiled, rain dripping down her face. But now I know. I want this connection. Real friendships with people who know all of me, even the messy parts, and stick around anyway. I want to help other people the way you helped me. I want to be someone's reason to keep going. You already are, I said. Trust me on that. You know what else I figured out? That night when my car broke down, it wasn't just a coincidence. I mean, maybe it was. Maybe it was just bad luck and bad weather. But I've stopped trying to figure out if things happen for a reason, or if we just make meaning out of random events. Either way, something good came from it. Something really good. A friendship, I said. A family, she corrected. That's what this is. You, me, your sister, my brother, all the people we've brought into this circle. We're a family, not by blood but by choice, by showing up for each other over and over again. She was right. That's exactly what it had become. A chosen family built on vulnerability and trust and mutual support. The kind of family that doesn't judge you for your worst days but celebrates your best ones. The kind that sits with you in the darkness and reminds you that morning always comes. I'm going to become a peer counselor, she announced suddenly. I've been thinking about it for months and I finally decided. I start training next month. That's amazing. You're going to be great at it. I hope so. I want to be for someone else what you were for me. What my therapist was for me. I want to be the person who reminds people they're not alone. We finally started walking toward our cars again, our shoes squelching in the puddles. When we reached her car, she turned back to me one more time. Same time Wednesday? She asked. I laughed. It was our ritual now. No matter what else was happening in our lives, Wednesday evenings were sacred. Our time to check in, to cook together, to just exist in the same space. You know you don't have to ask anymore, I said. I know, but I like asking. I like knowing that you'll always say yes. It reminds me that I have a place to go. People who want me around. After spending so long feeling like I had neither of those things, I never want to take it for granted. Fair enough. Yes, same time Wednesday. I'm thinking we try that new pasta recipe you sent me. Perfect. And hey, she paused, her hand on her car door. I love you. I don't say that enough, but I do. You're a family now, and I love you. I felt tears mixing with the rain on my face. I love you too. Drive safe, okay? Text me when you get home. Always do. I watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the rain. I stood there for a moment longer, thinking about everything that had happened since that first stormy night. How a desperate knock on my door had led to this. How one conversation at a party had rippled outward in ways I never could have imagined. My phone buzzed. It was my sister. That was a good speech. Proud of you. Also, your friend is incredible. You're lucky to have each other. I texted back, I know. Talk tomorrow? Tomorrow. Love you. I drove home slowly, careful on the wet roads. When I got there, my house looked different somehow. Warmer. More lived in. There were signs of life everywhere. A book she'd left on the coffee table last Wednesday. A painting she'd done that now hung in my hallway. Photos on the fridge from various dinners and gatherings. My phone buzzed again. This time it was her, home safe. Thanks again for tonight. For the speech, for sharing our story, for being you. See you Wednesday. Maybe Tuesday too if I get bored. Actually, probably Tuesday. Okay, definitely Tuesday. I smiled and texted back, Tuesday works. Bring that painting you've been working on. I want to see it. Deal. Hey, remember that first night when I knocked on your door? When you could have turned me away but didn't? Of course I remember. Best decision you ever made, right? One of them, yeah. One of them. What are the others? Giving you a key to my house. That was pretty good too. True. Okay, I'm really going to bed now. Unless you want to keep texting. I'm fine with that too. Go to sleep. I'll see you Tuesday. Fine, good night, love you. Love you too. I set my phone down and looked around my living room. A year ago, this space had been so quiet, so empty. I'd convinced myself I was fine with the solitude, that I didn't need people cluttering up my carefully controlled life. But I'd been lying to myself. We all need people. We all need connection. We all need someone who will open their door when we're standing in the rain, soaking wet and falling apart. I thought about all the Wednesday dinners ahead of us. All the late-night conversations and early morning texts. All the moments of crisis and celebration we'd share. This was just the beginning, really. The start of something that would last years, maybe a lifetime. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside, I was warm and dry and grateful. Grateful for storms that bring people together. Grateful for broken-down cars and dead phone batteries and all the small accidents that lead to big changes. Grateful for second chances and chosen families and friendships that save lives. I picked up my phone one more time and sent a message to the group chat we'd created. Her, my sister, her brother, a few others who'd become part of our circle. Thinking about having everyone over this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just dinner and hanging out. Who's in? The responses came quickly. Everyone was in. Of course they were. That's what family does. They show up. I went to bed that night with a full heart, listening to the rain against my windows. It didn't sound threatening anymore. It sounded like a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the storms in our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes they wash away the old to make room for the new. Sometimes they bring us people who change everything. And sometimes, if we're really lucky, those people refuse to leave our side, not because they're stuck or obligated, but because they choose to stay, because the connection is real and worth protecting, because we've become essential to each other in ways that can't be measured or explained, only felt. The rain continued through the night, and I slept better than I had in years. Tomorrow would come, and then the next day, and then Wednesday, and through all of it, I wouldn't be alone. None of us would. We'd found each other in the storm, and we'd decided to weather every storm after it together. That's what family does. They refuse to leave your side not because they have to, but because they want to. Because your presence in their life matters. Because together you're both stronger, happier, more whole. The rain had brought her to my door that night. But it was choice day after day that kept us in each other's lives. The choice to show up. The choice to be honest. The choice to care. The choice to stay. And I would keep making that choice every single day for as long as she kept making it too. That's what this story is really about. Not about one rainy night or one conversation at a party. It's about all the days that came after. All the small moments of showing up that add up to a lifetime of connection. She came back soaked in rain and refused to leave my side. And I was grateful every single day that she made that choice. That we both did.